The papers of James Ryan here at UCD Archives provide a remarkable insight not only into an aspect of the experience of Republican prisoners in Britain, where James Ryan himself was imprisoned after the Rising, but also into the important Republican milieu at University College Dublin. James Ryan was a medical student at UCD in 1916 and indeed acted as a medical officer in the GPO during the Rising. His sister Phyllis was an activist in Cumann na mBan and also studying science at UCD at the time. Several other of his sisters were also involved in Republican politics, and the house in which they lived in Dublin at 19 Ranelagh Road was a meeting place for radicals of all stripes. Indeed, Josephine Ryan was engaged to Sean McDiarmid, one of the men who'd be executed in the aftermath of the Rising itself. Several of the Ryan sisters took part in the Rising. Mary Kate, who was acting lecturer in French at UCD, was imprisoned in Mountjoy along with her sister Ellen after the Rising itself, and James was deported to Britain. The arrest of the Ryans and their imprisonment obviously caused a great deal of interest among their fellow students at University College Dublin, and in the months after the Rising, several students who stayed at Loretto Green, the quarters for female students at UCD, sent letters to Republican prisoners in Britain, to Ryan and several of his colleagues as well. And what these letters illustrate is, one, again, the growth of a Republican subculture among the students at UCD. The fact that they talk about wearing Republican badges on Grafton Street, which would have been regarded as a very unionist area of the city at the time. The fact that letters from Republican prisoners in Frongok and other internment camps were being read aloud at night among the female students at UCD, that many students who didn't know the men personally nevertheless adopted them as pen pals in the months after the Rising, and also in some ways illustrates the innocence and naivety of many of these young people, in that even though Dublin had seen a great degree of death and destruction, there's very little sense of that in the letters. You get, in many cases, you're not sure that how seriously these young people are taking the fact that actually martial law has been in place and that people have died in the violence which followed the Rising. But it also shows a great degree of sympathy for the Republicans themselves, and indeed people like Madge Calman, who was captain of the UCD hockey club, a third-year student. She writes to James Ryan, talks about the fact again that the students are becoming more and more Republican in their feelings. Another student writes to Ryan that a mere beardless boy will not do any of us now. In other words, students who hadn't been active in Republican politics or hadn't been jailed, and again a beard was a sign of the fact that someone had been a prisoner in Britain, was attractive to these young women, and also the fact that these young students were becoming more and more interested in Republican politics. And indeed, over the next few years, a significant number of UCD students would be both active in supportive roles and directly involved in the IRA's campaign in Dublin as well.